let's bring in Albert Breer, senior reporter, Monday Morning Quarterback. All right, let's start with the Aaron Rodgers absence. It's a choice. He attended the voluntary OTAs. He did not attend these. So, I mean, Robert Saleh called it an unexcused absence, which just poured gas on it, I think, a little bit. Let's start with that. What was your opinion on Saleh? He could have kept that to himself. Coming out and saying publicly at the podium it's unexcused. Was that a mistake by Saleh?
No, because I think that they felt like internally it would be opening Pandora's box if they did excuse it. They could have 20 guys next year coming to them and asking for mandatory minicamp or something else mandatory off if they allowed this. And I think the important thing is the way it was handled internally. They went to Aaron and sat down and talked to him about this and talked through the whole thing. And I'm not saying Aaron loves the idea of being fined, but he did understand why it was an unexcused absence, with the line there being one team, one set of rules. And here's the other part of it, Colin. Like I think the spring is more for guys who are in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and they really felt through the 10 OTA practices, they were able to get enough out of it where they could make the mini camp something that could be a little bit more geared towards some of those younger guys. Aaron got the work that he needed to get in. We could argue about the handling of it, of course. Like I personally would have loved to have seen Aaron Rodgers come out and explain it himself, so his coaches or his teammates wouldn't have to. But I don't think this is going to be a big deal when the Jets report in the summer. I think it's a big deal because nothing's happening in the NFL right now in the middle of June.
So Trevor Lawrence signed an extension. I do wonder, because that city, it feels like Ken Griffey with the Mariners. Like he was basically going to get Safeco built. He saved the team from leaving again. And I feel like Trevor Lawrence, in this franchise, if they were in London in 4 years, I wouldn't be shocked. I kind of feel his circumstances are different than Tua and Dak. They just are. He was a number 1 pick. He's been viewed as sort of generational, maybe disappointing. But do you think the Trevor Lawrence contract changes the market?
No, because I think all these guys were going to get paid in this range, like over 50, not too much over 50. I mean, I'd ask you, Colin, would you rather have Trevor or Tua? Would you rather have Trevor or Dak? Would you rather have Trevor or Jordan Love? And I think for most NFL teams, at least, the answer would be they'd rather have Trevor than those 3 guys. So paying him before those 3 guys got paid makes perfect sense, because if any of those guys got to a certain point, you were going to have to leapfrog them. And ultimately, I think this is about paying him for where you think he's going to be, not where he is right now. Is he the type of generational guy that we all thought he might be, back in 2019 and 2020? Maybe not, because, I think he was seen, in NFL circles as being on that Luck, Elway, Manning type of tier as a prospect. But he's been a really good player, and his circumstances have been really crappy.
Yeah. Came
Came into the league. The Urban Meyer year was what it was, a complete disaster. Comes back in year 2, had a great second year in the league, right? And leads one of the greatest playoff comebacks in NFL history, and then had a little bit of a bumpy third year. And so I think if you look at a kid who's sort of ridden all of that out, there are a lot of guys who I think would be in a worse spot than he's in. And I think they believe that if they can stabilize things around him, they're going to get a much better player in year 5, year 6, year 7. Here's the other thing. If Doug Peterson doesn't wind up being the guy in Jacksonville, the next guy's not going to throw Trevor Lawrence out. The next guy's going to be telling ownership, I can make it work. I can enhance Trevor Lawrence, which is another reason to take care of him now.
I don't think Brandon Aiyuk's going to be a Niner at the trade deadline. I think this offense runs through Shanahan's brain and Christian McCaffrey's legs. I think Aiyuk is replaceable. They drafted 2 receivers. They re-signed Jennings. And I think he's a really good player that a team like New England could use. Or maybe a Carolina. What is your take on the stories today that it's they're not close, the Niners and Aiyuk, who's really a remarkable player?
I think there are 2 things that I would say to give you some optimism that he could still be there. Number 1 is that they did get Christian McCaffrey done aggressively. And I think they had to do McCaffrey before they did Aiyuk, because if you pay Aiyuk $29, $30, $31 million a year, now the price of McCaffrey might go up. So you had to take care of McCaffrey first. The second thing is Our mutual friend, Mike Silver, reported that they were 26 million. That's not that far off. And a lot of times these things get ugliest towards the end. And the Debo thing was not clean until it was at the very end. And I would tell you this, and I do feel strongly about this part of it. I think if you fed John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan truth serum and asked them, who would you rather have on the roster, Debo Samuel or Brandon Aiyuk going forward? I think they would answer Aiyuk. They love Debo. Debo can do a lot of different things for them, but Debo is like a supercharged gadget player. Aiyuk is more of a typical number one receiver who can beat man coverage and you can build an offense around. And so, do I think they're going to go to Justin Jefferson numbers to get Aiyuk signed? No. And if Aiyuk draws a line in the sand there and says, I'm not going to take less than that, then, maybe he is traded. But, if there is some level of compromise, I still think the Niners would like to get something done with Aiyuk, and I don't think the door is closed on that.
So there is, we had a story earlier, J-Mac had this, where the Cowboys are going to prioritize the position over the talent, Dak over Ceedee and Micah. Now, it is a wide receiver league. College provides about 15 guys who can play immediately year one and be productive. So I can see slowing down a little on CeeDee Lamb. But edge rushers, there are not a lot of great ones, and Micah's there. I think I would prioritize a Micah or a CeeDee over Dak because I think, A, they're your picks, they're first-round picks, and they've exceeded expectations. And so I think the message you send to your locker room is, we draft you early and you hit. We're going to take care of you. My question to you is, if you pay Dak 60, can you also pay CeeDee and Micah, or are you insanely top-heavy on the roster?
Yeah, and that's a fair question. I think, like, one thing that's interesting is the Justin Jefferson thing hit them with both barrels, right? Like, so Justin Jefferson obviously raises the bar for receivers, and CeeDee had 1,700 yards last year, so he's going to ask for something not far off from what Jefferson got. And it also raises the bar for non-quarterbacks, which Mike is going to ask to be the highest paid non-quarterback. And so you go from Nick Bosa at 34 down to Jefferson at 35. And I think the Micah thing is in particular interesting, okay? Because you think about the message that it's going to send to the locker room, what they do with Micah Parsons here. They made Zach Martin wait. They made DeMarcus Lawrence wait. They made Dak Prescott wait the last time. So the guys in that locker room can look at ownership right now and said, you made all of these guys wait until after 4 years or until after their contracts were up to take care of them. What does that mean to me? And that's why the Micah thing's so interesting, because he's only been in the league 3 years. CeeDee, they've made wait, right? So how do you handle the Micah Parsons thing versus how you've handled Lamb now, Prescott before, Lawrence before, Zach Martin before, even like a Des Bryant, if you want to go further back? It's just really interesting because the Cowboys have been burned so many times by waiting on these things. And now they've got a guy who wants to get paid early. How do they handle that? How does that resonate in the locker room? That part's interesting. And then the Dak thing, of course, you have to be concerned with after what Trevor Lawrence got, what damage waiting could do, from here on out. If you're waiting and Jordan Love and Tua get paid, does that raise the stakes on what you got to pay Dak? It certainly could. And the franchise tag after the year, and I'm sure you know this, Colin, would cost them over $80 million. So that's not going to happen either.
I want to circle back to the Jets.
Yep.
I was told, and I know the area, but I didn't want to report it. I was told it was not only overseas, but other side of the
far
earth.
Overseas.
Yeah, I was told the place that it was
not London.
No, London's a quick jaunt from New York. So is my
you might connect through London, I think, right?
No,
would that be
yeah,
fair?
maybe you would connect.
Yeah.
So I would say this. It was true international travel, not just, JFK to Heathrow. Was it a vacation or was it I heard the word event. What does that mean? Event.
Yeah, I just think so. You use the phrase important to him.
Yeah.
I think that is probably the operative term here. And that I think is why probably why Robert Saleh couldn't excuse it, at least the way I look at it, right? Like, because then what would Garrett Wilson or Sauce Gardner or, whoever else, pick a name of a young guy in that team, Quinnen Williams, what might be important to them that they could come to you with next year? Like, what could that be? So I think that was sort of where this was a little tricky and where, they had to sit down with Aaron and talk through it. Now, like, again, like, is this going to have a long-term effect on the team? I think that sort of depends on how camp starts. And Aaron is still beloved in that locker room, so I can't imagine there'd be a problem in camp. And is it going to be a problem when the season starts? Like, that to me would be the bigger question because, of course, if they start 0-2, whether it's fair or not, everybody's going to be tying all of it back to that, right? So I think that's where the real questions are. To me, and I think, you and I are on the same wavelength here. This is just about getting the guy's mind right and him being where he needs to be. Fine. You could have managed it a little differently, but fine. But you do sort of open up those questions down the line where, if the team does struggle in any way, people are going to tie it back to this. And New York being New York, we know how that can turn the temperature up.
Always good. Albert Breer. We both kind of think we know where it is. I'm not going to report it. I don't want to be the first, but I kind of think I know where it is. And you feel the same way. You kind of. Yeah. All right. Nantucket's around the corner for you, my friend. Get the SPF.
I'm getting some color now too. I was out at a lacrosse tournament in Long Island this weekend. I think I'm starting to build my base layer up.
Good seeing you, buddy. Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.